What's going on, YouTube? Mr. Wheels here once again. Welcome to another edition of Sports Talk. And this video marks the first of a four-part mini-series. It's time for the NHL Season Preview and predictions for the 2014-2015 season. This video will be a preview and my predictions for the Atlantic Division, followed by the Metropolitan Division in another video, and then we'll get into the Western Conference. So I believe it's the Central and Pacific. But we'll start with the Atlantic Division. And before I get into what I want to speak about, I'd ask you to, as always, please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Twitter at Sledgehead86 and like my Facebook fan page, Mr. Wheels86. Alright, so let's starting with the Atlantic Division. Going to start off with the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs were 38, 36, and 8 last season. This was good enough for 6th in the Atlantic Division. This was met with sweeping changes in management in the offseason. Brendan Shanahan is in as head of hockey operations. He hired a young guy by the name of Kyle Dubas as assistant general manager. Dubas is the former general manager of the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds of the OHL, and he is an analytical guy, and he focuses a lot on puck possession. So for the Leafs this season, you can expect them to be more of a puck possession team. Now let's get into their personnel changes. Gone are Carl Gunnarsson, Mason Raymond, Nikolai Kulemin, David Bolin, Jay Clement, Jerry D'Amigo, and Tim Gleason. And as I'm sure most of you will remember, the Tim Gleason being gone is kind of a bit of a fiasco. The Leafs were trying to get Josh Georges. It didn't work out. And in order to try to get Josh, they had to get rid of Tim Gleason. And the question marks for the Leafs this season would have to be their depth at center. I'm still not sold that Nazem Kadri is a top 6 forward and a top 6 and a second line center in the NHL. I'm just not. He's a talented guy, don't get me wrong, but I'm still not really sold on him as a potential second line center. The Leafs defense is still a question mark, and I would say because of these two things, they are a playoff bubble team at best. They will probably compete for the wild card spot, but I don't expect them getting into the third division playoff spot. Let's get into who they added onto the team. They went into the KHL a little bit in the offseason and signed Petri Kontiola, who's only going to be getting $600,000, even though he signed, I think it was just for over $1 million, because he had some issues in getting out of the KHL. It cost him some money. Sticking with the KHL signing, they're bringing back Leo Komarov, who was on the team a couple years ago. They're also bringing back former Leaf Matt Fratton. They added Stefan Robida, and this is a signing that I like. In the trade that sent Carl Gunnarsson to St. Louis, they picked up Roman Polak, and I really like him because he's got playoff experience. He's a very physical defenseman. I really like him. They signed Mike Santorelli, David Booth, and Daniel Winnick, and that will give the Leafs some depth. And I think the Leafs can make the playoffs. I'm not counting them out by any means, but like I've already said, I expect them to be a bubble team. They're going to be wild card at best. I expect them to improve on their record a little bit. Maybe around 40 to 45 wins. I don't see them being much better than that, but this is a start for the future. Possibly with more adds in the upcoming offseason, they will be a playoff team next year. Now, let's move on to the Montreal Canadiens. They were 46-28-8 last season, and they lost eventually in the playoffs. Third round loss to the New York Rangers. Now, the Canadiens, coming off a great season, lost some key veteran players. Brian Gionta and Josh Georges both went to Buffalo. Danny Briere is gone, and also Thomas Vanek has left the team. And the Canadiens added P.A. Parenteau, and I'm going to get this name wrong probably, but Yuri Selak, I think is how you say that. Probably mispronounced it, but oh well. I'm not sure where he's from. They added Manny Malhotra and Tom Gilbert, and they signed P.K. Subban to an 8-year, $72 million contract, or $86 million contract, whatever it was. However, because they lost their veteran guys, I don't think they added enough to the team in replace of guys like Gionta and Georges and Briere and Vanek. And when you strip all those guys away, they're still a very young team. And although they do have some playoff experience, I think they're going to struggle this year. They're still good enough to get into the third divisional playoff spot, but they might be forced into the wild card spot. And if any team was a sure thing to claim the wild card in the Atlantic Division, it would be the Montreal Canadiens. Let's move on to the Ottawa Senators. They were 37, 31, and 14 last season. This was good enough for 5th in the Atlantic Division, and they had a lot of problems last season, and I expect those problems to continue this season. I'm talking about Jason Spezza asking for a trade in that whole saga. They lost Jason Spezza to St. Louis, I believe it was, and they also lost Alex Hemsky to free agency, and they added Alex Chason, who they got in the trade they lost Spezza to Dallas, and they got Alex Chason back in that trade. He was the only notable NHL player that they got back in that trade, and they also added David Legwand. Again, Ottawa is a team that I don't think added enough, so I think it's pretty easy to say that they will not be making the playoffs. I can say that with certainty. Goaltending for me is a question for them. Yes, they have Erik Karlsson, but I don't think their defense is going to be good enough. I think they're going to struggle to score. I think they're going to be possibly even worse than they were last year. Yes, they have Kyle Turris, Bobby Ryan, some really good young players, but I don't think you can count on those guys to completely carry the load for a full 82-game season. It's just not going to happen. So I think, without question, Ottawa's out of the playoffs. Let's move on to Buffalo. They were a dismal 21, 51, and 10 last season. That was good enough for dead last in the Atlantic Division, 8th in the division. However, they had a big offseason after a horrible season. They got rid of Christian Ehrhoff and Ville Leino, both compliance buyouts. Corey Conacher is gone, and John Scott is also gone. They added Matt Molson. They brought him back to the team. They added Brian Gionta, Andre Mazzaros, Josh Georges, Cody McCormick, Sam Reinhart, and Zach Delpay, I think is how you say that. The Sabres should be a better team than they were last season. They are no longer, in my opinion, a lottery team, or are going to compete for a lottery pick in next June's draft. However, despite them potentially being a better team, they are a bubble team at best. If they get into the playoffs, it will not be a divisional spot, in my opinion. It will be the wild card spot, and I doubt that will happen. All right, so let's move on to the Detroit Red Wings. Can the Red Wings keep their 23-year playoff streak alive. They were decimated by injuries last season, and it was a miracle, in my opinion, that they pulled off getting into the playoffs. And yes, I am a Detroit Red Wings fan, and I can be critical and realistic about my team. Detroit is my team. I love them, but I'm not going to say they're a sure thing for the playoffs. And let's get into why that is. Personnel changes. Daniel Alfredsson is a question mark, even though he was invited to training camp. I'm not sure if Bertuzzi is still on the team, Todd Bertuzzi. I know for sure Jordan Tutu and David Legwand are definitely not on the team. And as for additions, they did not make any significant free agent additions. They were in on a bunch of players, Dan Boyle and Christian Ehrhoff, and people to help them get better defensively, but it did not work out. So what does that mean? It means they're going to be relying on their youth, guys like Tomas Tatar, Thomas Jurko, Darren Helm, Gustav Nyquist, Danny DeKaiser, Justin Advocator. The list can go on and on and on. And those guys need to step up and really contribute this year. But the saving grace for the Red Wings is they've still got veteran guys like Zetterberg, Datsuk, Franzen, Cronwall. The key thing will be, can this team stay much healthier than they were last season? And if they do that, there should be no reason why they can't steal the third divisional playoff spot in the Atlantic Division. And I say steal because, the teams that will be competing for that third spot are teams like Toronto, Tampa Bay, Montreal. So the Detroit Red Wings are, I'm going to say, they would grab the third divisional playoff spot at best, but they'll probably, if they're going to have any chance of making the playoffs, it'll be the wild card. And Jimmy Howard he's got to have the best season of his career, in my opinion, for Detroit to have a chance. So let's move on to the Boston Bruins, who eliminated the Detroit Red Wings. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say that Detroit was 39, 28, and 15 last season, and they were eliminated by the Boston Bruins. Moving on to Boston, President's Trophy winners. This season they lost. They were first in the Atlantic Division. They lost Jerome McGinley, Sean Thornton, Chad Johnson, Andre Mazzaros, and they didn't add any significant off-season signings because they had salary cap issues, so they really couldn't do anything. And however, despite losing the players that they did, I still think Boston is pretty close to a sure thing to take the top spot in the Atlantic Division again this year. I don't think they'll win the President's Trophy, but I think they're going to could be a shoo-in for first place in the Atlantic. And they're a playoff team, in my opinion, no doubt. Worst case scenario, they finish second in the division, but I doubt that. I think it'll be first all the way. Let's move on to the Tampa Bay Lightning. They were 46, 27, and 9 last season and lost in the first round of the Montreal Canadiens. They got better this season despite getting rid of a lot of players on their team from last year. Guys that are off the team this year are Andres Lindback, Nate Thompson, BJ Crombeen, Mike Koska, and they added Jason Garrison, Anton Stroman, Brian Boyle, Evgeny Nabokov, and Brandon Morrow. So, in a nutshell, Tampa Bay got better, and they got better on defense, in my opinion. And it's pretty obvious with the signings of Garrison and Stroman. Garrison gives them a better a booming point shot, and Stroman should be able to quarterback the first unit of their power play. And Steve Stamkos expect him to put up Rocket Richard numbers again, MVP numbers. And he also plays the point on the power play, so they shouldn't have any trouble scoring. They've got some young guys on the team as well that are going to be better this year, I'm sure. They've got a veteran backup goaltender now to help Ben Bishop, and if they stay healthy, healthier than they were last season, there shouldn't be any reason why they can't make the playoffs. I'm saying they'll probably be second in the division. Worst case scenario, I think they're a shoo-in for the third divisional playoff spot, whereas some of the other teams I've already talked about, they're kind of on the bubble on where they're going to finish, but to me, Tampa Bay, it's a little bit more clear-cut. They're going to be top 3 in the division. And let's round out this video with the Florida Panthers. They were 29, 45, and 8 last season. That was good enough for 7th in the division. And they missed out on the playoffs after making it the season before, or making it a couple years ago, sorry. And they had an overhaul this offseason. They should be better this year. Obviously, they had let me get to the subtractions. Ed Jovanovski, Tom Gilbert, and Scott Clemenson are all gone. The additions, there's quite a lot of them. David Bowen, Jussi Jokinen, Sean Thornton, Derek McKenzie, Willie Mitchell, Al Montoya, Aaron Ekblad, obviously the first overall pick, Aaron Ekblad, are all on the team this year. The Panthers, in my opinion, will be better, but by better I mean they will be a bubble team to make the playoffs. They will compete for the wild card spot. I don't think you will see them claim one of the top 3 divisional spots in the Atlantic. They will be better, and here's the key. Bobby Lou, Roberto Luongo will be the difference if this team is going to be hugely successful. It'll be in large part due to Bobby Lou. The Panthers are young, but I like their defense even though they're young. They got guys like Eric Branson, Aaron Ekblad, Dmitry Kulikov, Brian Campbell, Willie Mitchell, obviously a veteran guy coming in. Obviously, I think your first D pair is Campbell and Mitchell, and then probably DeBranson and Kulikov, and that leaves Ekblad. He can easily make be in the top 6 defense, and they have depth at center with Barkov, Huberdeau. I believe it's Bornstad is how you pronounce that. He's a winger. David Bolin, probably a shoo-in for the third line center, possibly even second line. So they are deep. Maybe not as deep on the wing, but I don't think they're going to have as many problems as they did last year, and it's going to be a good season. And the Atlantic Division is going to be probably one of the most competitive divisions in the NHL, probably next to the Pacific Division in the Western Conference. So that wraps up this look at the 2014-2015 NHL Atlantic Division preview. As always, guys, once again, please, I'd ask you to like this video. Please subscribe to my channel and support me. You can follow me on Twitter at Sledgehead86 and like my Facebook fan page, Mr. Wheels86. Stay tuned in the next couple days for the 2014-2015 preview. The Metropolitan Division will be up next, followed by the Central and the Pacific a few days after that. Take care, guys. I'll see you next time.